All right, so Bitcoin treasuries. Should we start on a federal level, a state level, a municipal level? Should we talk about the public ones? I feel like this is the most
I think the companies are. I mean, the
frothy.
government buying Bitcoin. I mean, they buy Bitcoin. Okay, then what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you have interesting dynamics there of just legitimizing this asset if you kick off an arms race with governments
Yeah.
buying it. So that's definitely interesting. I don't know that I'm super confident that's going to happen in the short term, but it's the fact that conversations are happening at all is pretty insane.
Yeah.
The corporate Bitcoin treasury stuff, yeah, that's where sometimes I feel like there's these times in the industry where I think a lot of people go, I don't understand this thing. It's really hot. I can't say I can fully explain it all. Am I missing something? Right.
Yeah.
And this kind of feels like that. Usually that feeling isn't ends poor. Usually when you get those vibes, it ends poorly.
Yeah.
But again, it's like if it's hard to explain sort of a priori, sort of like what the failure modes are. I mean, with this stuff, it doesn't seem like there's anywhere near the level of systemic risk of like the Three Arrows Capital or these sort of levered, fractional reserve plays that you saw in, the FTX era. It could, but I don't, if a lot of these companies fail to maintain a premium to the NAV, sort of what happens? Does it trigger off any sort of spiral? Do they have to sell? If they don't have to sell, maybe not.
Yeah.
And I could also see a world where the MicroStrategy is sort of the most well-run one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then more, each new Bitcoin treasury company has to do something to differentiate or take some more risk to stand apart. And so maybe that could kick things getting a little bit out of hand or out of control.
Yeah.
But I don't really know, right? People have asked, is River going to do this? No. I think one of the downsides of becoming a Bitcoin treasury company is that your product becomes your stock. And could we do that? I mean, yeah, sure, I guess. But at the end of the day, I care about building an operating company that does something I really care about, which is offering really good financial services for Bitcoin. And I think the problem with trying to run this playbook is your business becomes a whole different thing, actually.
So you have MicroStrategy that was, business logistics software for the U.S. government. Their lunch got eaten by Palantir, right? And that's probably never coming back. Palantir is now the operating system for the American government. And then they figure out this, financial mechanism. They basically hack the system. They've done very well with it. First mover advantage, gold standard, all those things. And then you have internationally in each country, Metaplanet being the gold standard internationally because of the frictions around their equity market and how they treat Bitcoin in Japan. I think it's like 49% tax on capital gains in Japan for Bitcoin, and for equities, it's like 30% in that range. So that's a no-brainer. Metaplanet started as a chain of like Japanese businessman hotels, basically, and I think it was sort of like a mid-level one. And that business model was collapsing, particularly through COVID. So they found an exit. They found religion in Bitcoin because that kind of like saves the company.
It also helps that Simon used to trade, options and derivatives at Goldman back in the day. So he's someone
Certainly helps.
Where the product becomes a stock. Him and Dylan LeClaire are quite capable at sort of securitizing their own securities, or securitizing Bitcoin through their own securities in an attractive way.
For sure, but you have two different approaches there, right? Like MicroStrategy can't use the treasury to compete with Palantir, but Metaplanet could use that treasury to revitalize the brand and like go back into hotels. There's an underlying operating business that's of some interest, right? It could turn it profitable. Then you have like GameStop that's doing it. GameStop's never coming back, really. Like it's not a brick and mortar like place where people go and buy Funko dolls and video games or whatever. So the thing that I find really interesting are like the 21 Inc. and Nakamoto having a future product, a future financial platform, which is the operating company that is effectively bootstrapped by this massive treasury. And you touched on the liquidation cascade as it relates to MNAV. If that MNAV premium goes to a discount they'll be forced to sell. If that happens, ETFs are also unloading. That could turn into something that's pretty brutal. There's another element to it as well, particularly for the new companies, investor unlocks, right? And if the unlock hits at a time where Bitcoin market price is not necessarily cooperating because it's going to go honey badger mode on people, that could get ugly. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think the systemic risk is there, not in a way in terms of the incestuous like interconnectivity of, FTX and Three Arrows and Celsius and everybody else that was involved with that. But it could get ugly.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could hurt the price for sure.
It could hurt the price.
I don't know that anyone will lose their Bitcoin.
They won't lose their Bitcoin. It'll transfer. Look, I think the big prime brokers, like when we're talking about like a Galaxy or an IDIG, I think that they're probably licking their chops for that day, and they'll be ahead of it. But it could get ugly, and it could trigger a new wave of enthusiastic regulators.
Mm-hmm. Although
that want to come in.
I will say though, if you were to be, say you have one of these companies, you can convince someone to give you like $1 billion, and you're just gonna buy Bitcoin with it. I mean, it is. I certainly get the appeal. If you basically
awesome.
like, yeah, let me. I feel pretty. I mean, I think in the short to long term, like 5 to 10 years, I think buying at these levels, God willing, will end up being a good trade. But I think in general, it's like, on the one hand, yes, if someone's going to give you $1 billion and you don't really have much of a business and you can just buy Bitcoin, I think that is pretty attractive. But to the point, I think the way the liquidation kind of cascade would kind of happen is with these convertible notes. I think most of them don't have like a margin call or like a liquidation point. They're also, most of them should be 5 to 7 years in term. So like long-term 0% interest type convertible notes. So there isn't a huge amount of risk in the short term. I think the bigger risk is if Bitcoin goes down, your NAV could go, if you have a convertible note, you're in Bitcoin, the total Bitcoin you buy goes down below the value of your convertible note, you are insolvent and your NAV is like zero. Mm-hmm. So I think that is the particular risk if you do with convertible notes. And if you need to sell in order to pay for your corporate overhead, then obviously people are going to price in, you're going to continue to sell your Bitcoin. One does wonder in that situation if MSTR just comes in and gobbles them up. They'd certainly be well qualified. I think there probably would be a roll up play there, but I think you're right that this feels like one of those. There seems to be a lot of exuberance, maybe on par with what the NFTs had before, and various other trends. It's kind of funny this time, especially when seeing the shitcoins do it. It's actually the dumbest fucking shit I've ever seen. Yeah, where it's just like,
I love it.
And I think like Arthur Hayes, I remember Arthur Hayes wrote this. He met in one of his blog posts like 4 years ago, talked about how, for example, with Ethereum in particular, there's always this tension between the sound money narrative and the compute platform narrative.
100%.
And basically, like if you succeed as a compute platform, then value doesn't necessarily accrue to the token holder. But it's hilarious to see like bankers are like lining up with these and like going to these legacy bag holders like Joe Lubin and this stuff, and are like, hey, look, you can offload, you can dump all your bags, get a premium. Yeah. But some of those equities are looking pretty nasty right now.
We have a tax neutral vehicle to put it in, and you can take the security out and dump it on retail. It's the same game.
Same game.
It's always the same.
There's a whole gold rush of investment banking types, finance types trying to sell products to companies, trying to do this in one way or another. Private debt offerings. Running the playbook for private companies as well. Yeah, we'll see.
Which is interesting because you had taken some equity that previously was raised, and now you had put some of that in Bitcoin, sort of, which I guess you could say is similar sort of Bitcoin treasury strategy. But
we didn't raise capital to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
We raised capital to run the company,
yep.
And then we accumulated Bitcoin over the last 6 years of running the company. So sure, some of it went to buying Bitcoin, but it wasn't like that wasn't the purpose of the fundraising round.
Which
arguably, you could argue, well, we should have done that, right? When Bitcoin was $2,000.
Sure. But the reason I bring it up is more so this is kind of what like using Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset without doing this. I don't even know. We call them treasury strategy companies right now, which actually on the face of it is totally retarded. Like those words don't really
very much.
Like every company's has a treasury strategy. But like, yeah, that is sort of like an organic way to do it. We're using Bitcoin as like a long-term savings vehicle. as opposed to come.
It has to make sense
buy my-
for the internal operations, because I think you're right. You hit on this earlier. It becomes the entire point of the company, especially if it does well.
Yes.
Now that it's doing well, it's like 99% of my time should be doing the most profitable thing for shareholders. And if that ends up working, like, the underlying operating company no longer really matters. So I think that's going to be a really interesting dynamic for the new ones that are coming out saying, all right, we're going to have this financial service platform. It's going to be a Bitcoin, portfolio of Bitcoin first companies that are going to interact, and it's going to be synergistic and all of these things. Building that out while managing the treasury and continuing to try and increase the size of that treasury, especially if they get some headwinds around, MNAV or investor unlocks, is going to be that's a delicate dance.
Yeah, and also sort of as a CEO, what are you signing up for, right? Obviously, you could take this to the absurd. What if every business in the world focused on just a Bitcoin treasury strategy? No business did anything else, right? You could argue that's what every business should be doing, for the interest of their shareholders. That's sort of like then nothing gets done other than buying Bitcoin. Yeah. So someone's got to do things, right?
We need doctors and hospitals.
Someone's got to run operating companies. and so as a CEO, it's sort of like, okay, when you're the first, right? When you're Saylor, right? That's like Giga Chad, finding this new, unlock in the financial system.
For sure.
It's like, do you really want to be the 30th one through the door? Like, I don't know, maybe that's still really early, right? But it's also sort of like, what do you, yes, shareholders, but also like, what's your mission, right?